Over the past few decades, the best poetry from Northern Ireland has been about not ignoring the dark present and at the same time imagining different futures. The best poems have been true to our multifarious literary traditions which offer us profound ways of understanding the cultural, religious and political complications of this place. We have here a wonderful cat's cradle of cultures that intertwine and pull against each other. A wonderfully rich confluence of cultures, Irish, English, Scottish, Anglo-Irish. A whirlpool that causes violence sometimes, but it can also generate energy and creative commotion. We are gradually harnessing for good the power of the whirlpool. We recently embarked on a new era of power sharing, but the complications will remain for a long time. And that's where poetry and the other arts can help to explain us to ourselves. Poetry raises consciousness and conscience. Ireland, and especially Northern Ireland, are so complicated that people have foolishly tried to simplify them. There are those who believe exclusively in a green Ireland, others in an orange Ulster. Both concepts are dangerously inadequate, lethally inadequate. We should be trying to undermine those old certainties and all the other death-dealing certainties. We should be opposing the old binary simplicities, orange, green, Catholic, Protestant, nationalist, unionist. It should never again be a question of either or, but of both and. And we need to be more careful when we use the word identity. It's a useful concept when it covers all our complexities of affiliation, the complexities of our lived experience. On our island, identity has been reduced to a very dangerous cultural political construct, a crudely drawn badge or label. Ideas of Irishness and ideas of Britishness are beginning to show their age, especially here in Northern Ireland. In Northern Ireland, both took on pathological political form. My own experience does not mesh with either. I was brought up here in Belfast by English parents. My father served in both World Wars. At primary school and at home there were tensions. I had trouble, for instance, with accents, trying to sound Belfast in the playground, trying to sound English at home. I was recreating myself daily. Now, I'd hate to be considered anything other than an Irish poet, and at the same time I must insist on remaining true to my Britannic side. Some of the time I feel Irish, some of the time British, most of the time neither. The Good Friday Agreement allowed me to be open about feeling all three. Why in any case should we be confined to only one cultural affiliation? We often define ourselves by what we are not. In America, despite sharing the English language, I feel closer to the French and the Italians. I feel European. In Italy, I feel Northern European, more at home with Rembrandt, say, than with Michelangelo. In England, I feel very Irish. And in Dublin, I know for sure that I'm an Ulsterman. Belfast made me. The Belfast of the red brick streets, the Belfast dominated by the mountains, the hill at the top of every street, Black Mountain and Divas. All through my childhood I looked through my bedroom window at the Black Mountain and watched it moving in the bubbles in the glass. My childhood was lived out in a leafy suburb that was only partially built up. There were fields and hedges between the houses. I cycled to the Lagan towpath, through Barnett's Demesne, to the Minnaburn and its beautiful custodians, the Minnaburn beaches. I fished for spicklebacks. I cycled on to the Giant's Ring, the Neolithic dolmen, the grassy radar dish, which I imagined was receiving messages from the stars. But on the other hand, there was the Lisburn Road, with its shops and cinemas, the Regal and the Majestic, all that bustle and commerce. So I spent my boyhood with one foot in the town and one foot in the countryside, and I drifted between both, just as I drifted between Irishness and Englishness. As a boy, I was rather indeterminate. As an adult, I remain rather indeterminate. I like to think that this is a good thing, better than being fixed and rigid, hardened and insensitive. Perhaps being indeterminate helps me to keep myself impressionable, open to possibilities. Perhaps I should end with a poem. The sort of lyric poetry I write usually makes its occasion in private. But in 1994, I wrote a poem which for once made something of a public impact. In August '94, there were rumours that there was going to be an IRA ceasefire. I was reading the Iliad at the time and produced this sonnet about the old King Priam visiting the tent of Achilles to beg for the body of his son Hector. The poem appeared in the Irish Times a few days after the IRA did indeed declare their ceasefire. Ceasefire. Put in mind of his own father and moved to tears, Achilles took him by the hand and pushed the old king gently away. But Priam curled up at his feet and wept with him until their sadness filled the building. Taking Hector's corpse into his own hands, Achilles made sure it was washed, and, for the old king's sake, laid out in uniform, ready for Priam to carry, wrapped like a present, home to Troy at daybreak. When they'd eaten together, it pleased them both to stare at each other's beauty as lovers might. Achilles built like a god, Priam good-looking still and full of conversation, who earlier had sighed, I get down on my knees and do what must be done, and kiss Achilles' hand, the killer of my son.